to 5, I'm gonna fly, I'm gonna die. Nothing seems to matter when your head is full of dust. You wanna crust, it turns to rust. You lose your faith, you lose your trust. I have to prove that I'm alive, I'm gonna fly, I'm not afraid to die. For change, but it never comes. We sit around twiddling our thumb. We hope the years will be on our side. No, it's too late, too late, too late. We see the sands cascading down, the hands speeding up as they go round. We hope the years will be on our side. No, it's too late, too late, too late.
I think we're live. All right. Well, welcome, Peter. Thanks for agreeing to do a live question and answer chat session here today, Sunday, November 16th. We're about a week or two away from a new record here. Congratulations. What album number is this again?
Oh, I do lose track, Roger, a little bit because there's been a lot of them. I mean, if you're counting the 4 main band albums, and then you include the Sidekicks, which was also went out on an album, which is, you know, a very, very early material. I think we're up to about 28 or something like that, and then there's a couple more in the can ready to go. So yeah, it's a lot of work over a lot of years, but yeah, it's been a labor of love. I've thoroughly enjoyed every moment of it.
Well, as I was looking, I put a few in the back. There's actually, I believe this is the 4th record I've worked with you on, with Think Like a Key. The first one being a collaboration effort with the No Escape, and you've done 3 solo albums since then, and it's been about, I think, an album a year or something like that. So
Yeah,
what do you think about this new album? What would you say makes it different or special, or what was the idea on this one?
it's a funny thing with albums because, you know, I would never sit down to write an album, but because over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, I've had an incredible creative burst. I don't know where it started when I was working with Mark Mortimer, but you know, he increased my output considerably by sending me tracks which I worked on, and then I carried on from there. I mean, it's been a wonderful time because, like you know yourself, the muse isn't always there. Sometimes you're up for writing songs. Other times you can go a week, maybe 3-4 weeks without any inspiration at all. It can actually last longer, which is terrifying because it always feels like it's never going to come back. At the moment, it has dipped just a little bit because I've got such a backlog of work. But I would never set out to actually write an album. What happens is the songs just build up. There's a lot of them. And then I start looking at the tracks that I've got finished and think about, you know, an album listening experience. In the old days, when we put an album together, it was on vinyl, so you had to track list. You had to be very careful about the mood that you were going to create with those albums. And you would do that with a very careful track listing, and that is a great pleasure. I still find that a great pleasure in actually compiling the album, putting that track list together to create a mood, assuming that, certainly with vinyl anyway, that people were going to put the album on and listen from start to finish, which is what we always intended. And what, that when you make an album, that's what you're hoping, that even with the CD, not so much with downloads, I suppose, anymore, but certainly with vinyl and CD, somebody would think, oh, I'll listen to that album. And you'd sit down in a darkened room late at night and play the album, and you play it from start to finish. And hopefully in that way you would get what artists try to do. You create a mood and you hope it's leading them through not necessarily a story, but a listening experience. And I think I've always done that. It's always been very close to me, that sort of thing. And we always did it with the band. We had to do it then because it was vinyl. I mean, Tangerine Dream, had to finish with the Sky Children. There was no other way out of that. That was a big finisher, So, yeah, if you actually thinking about that, then it would bring us right back full circle to the life and times of Blue Larry and the Huguenot Kid, because that does also finish with a belter as well. You've got Larry's back there himself, and that it's getting on for 14 minutes long. So I've had some big ones in my time. There's the Sky Children, which I think clocks in at maybe 9 or 10 minutes. You've got
on a good night.
You've got The Journey, which is the title track from the album I wrote and recorded with Asteroid Number 4. I think that clocks in about 11 minutes, and again is lots of verses. And now you've got Blue Larry, which I'm very pleased with the way it's turned out. There is a story behind Blue Larry, which when I used to write songs with Ed, I would write the lyrics and then pass them to Ed. And then when he felt the inclination, he would work on it. And some songs slipped through the net, and Blue Larry was one of those. It was written very late in our career, probably 1970, 71. And unfortunately, Ed didn't get a chance to look at it. I think he told me he was going to work on it, or he was working on it, but the band broke up at that point, so I never got to hear what he was doing, even if it was only a sketch of a melody or whatever. But I was digging through some old files 3-4 months ago, and I came across the lyric sheet, the original one. And it just always appealed to me anyway, because it's a long story, and it comes to life for me. And I thought, well, I'll do it myself. I'll try it myself. And so I worked on it very hard for a number of weeks, and that's why that's on the album.
Now, you mentioned, Blue Larry is the longest song on the record, and was it always intended to be? Because this is we're going back then. This would have been when you guys were Fairfield Parlour.
Yeah. This was 1970. This was 1970. I mean, I just wrote what I wanted to write. Some songs were short, sometimes were longer, but for some reason, that particular story needed that number of verses to tell it. It's pushing things a bit for people tolerance for a longer song. And if it's a longer song, it has to be bloody good. It has to, keep people interested. So that's what I always strive for. Anyway, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, obviously, when it comes to music. I'm sure you are yourself. You know, if you're going to spend this time writing and recording, you want it to be right. So, yeah, well, I never set out and thought, oh, right, well, let's write a 14 minute song. It never works out like that. It just, it took that to have this song bring the story to life. So on The Journey, which, as I say, was the title track from the album with Asteroid Number 4, I distinctly remember when we were doing we were in LA. I was doing a little tour of US, and we ended up in LA at Robert Bartholomew's studio with all the band. They were all there, and we cut the lead vocals there in Robert's lovely cozy studio. And they were trying to. Robert was in charge of the production at that point, but the band was saying, "Well, yeah, I think Scott said, I've never forgiven him, Scott Vitt. He said, do you think there's too many verses?" And I said to him, my response was, imagine if Dick Leahy had said to us in the studio in 1967, "Here, guys, that's Sky Children. I think it's got too many verses." But, you know, we wouldn't have given in then, and I didn't give in LA, and when we were cutting the vocals for The Journey. But yeah, it takes that long, and if it's, you know, if it does and it pleases people, it tells the story, then, you know, I've done my job on that side.
And would you say, well, we just kind of start talking, but maybe we should tell a little bit about, well, you know, for those not familiar, right, with Peter Daltrey and where you're coming from. So we already name dropped, I think, Fairfield Parlour and Kaleidoscope, but these are the bands you were in the 60s. Well, Sidekicks was the first band, and what's interesting is those are three names I'm throwing out there, but it was the same four guys, right?
It's quite a touching story, really. You know, from my point of view. Look, we began as just four kids, like all bands, well, most bands do, particularly at the time of the Beatles, because everybody thought that you know, they were inspired by the Beatles. Everybody thought they could be in a band. I was working in London at ABC Television in the post room, and they employed another guy called Eddie Puma. And we got on so well, you know, like you do, just things click. And it was a fateful moment. It was a really fateful moment for me. It changed my life completely. And, you know, that's why I'm talking to you now, because Ed turned around one day and said to me, "Do you want to be in my band?" And I said, "Well, I didn't even know you had a band." And he said, no, we need a singer. You know, I said, "Well, I don't sing." And he said, "Well, you could come along and have a try." You know, like all teenagers, I'd stood in front of the mirror at home listening to Buddy Holly or whatever and singing along. Whether I ever thought I could do it or not, I don't know up to that point. But when Ed said, "Well, come along and have a go," I was very nervous, because I thought, well, you know, it's a band, they're musicians, you know, these guys are going to be weird, you know. But of course, I turned up at the school hall in Acton where Dan and Steve and Ed had got together, and I met the guys, and of course Steve and Dan were really lovely guys. And to answer your question, yeah, we stayed together thick and thin for 8 years, whatever it was. And the band, the Sidekicks, Kaleidoscope, I Love White, Fairfield Parlour, whatever you want to call us, it was always just the four of us. It was a very, very close bond. I mean, when you're in a band, it's a different sort of bond. I mean, we call ourselves brothers, but it's very strong. It's a very strong bond. And then you've got an additional bond between the writers. And Ed and I were, you know, working hard at writing songs for the band, because after not long, really, only not many months, when we were doing covers of Beatles and Rolling Stones, it wasn't long, we realized that we had to write our own songs. I mean, the Beatles had showed everybody that. So Ed and I began writing, and those are the songs that are on the Sidekicks CD. Which is a fun album. I mean, it's crude and, you know, broken up and recorded in Denmark Lane in Tin Pan Alley in London, in a cheap old studio. It had egg boxes pinned to the wall as
soundproofing
to dampen the sound. But that's a charming little artifact. But yeah, we started writing there. And that's what held us together. The songs held us together, and then we play them to Dan and Steve, and you know, we'd all work out what we wanted to do. and it just evolved from there. And of course, as soon as we got our recording contract, it solidified that bond.
Well, yeah. So that's a good overview of where you're coming from. And then now, for those who don't know, Fairfield Parlour basically ended early 70s, like 71, 72, when the second album failed to appear at that time, eventually was released. However, you guys, or you yourself, kind of, I don't want to say put words in your mouth, but did you throw in the towel, or how was it? Because there's no, where you're very active musically, or did you just kind of say those days are behind me? Because then I think your first solo album came out until the 1990s. So maybe you can talk about that period in between.
Yeah, when people know the story. If they don't, I'll briefly tell it. I mean, we'd recorded. We changed our name to Fairfield Parlour because the Kaleidoscope under that name was going nowhere. We had a terrible record company at the moment. They had very bad distribution. The records would never get in the shops. So that was frustrating. I mean, we should have had a massive hit with Jenny Artichoke, for instance. I mean, the radio stations never stopped playing that. I think our history would have been, our legacy certainly would have been quite different if we'd have had a hit with Jenny Artichoke, because the record company would have demanded that we become a bubblegum pop group. But in some ways it's fortunate we didn't have a hit with that, because we'd have been lumbered with it forever, and it's only a little nursery rhyme ditty. But
sometimes the best hits are the ones you don't get.
No, I know, and 3 Minutes and Brighton, the radio stations absolutely loved it. But the Kaleidoscope name was fading because we'd released a lot of singles that we loved. I mean, Do It Again for Jeffrey, Flight from a Sheer, Faintly Blowing, all those were wonderful. We loved those, but they never hit. So then we struggled with the albums as well, and the distribution behind it. And then we were contacted one day by a Radio 1 disc jockey called David Simons, who we'd befriended, or he befriended us. We used to do a lot of live sessions for his show. And he came to us and he said, look, I'm sort of fed up with what I'm doing. I'm just sitting behind a desk playing records. I'm a creative person. I want to do more than that. And I don't think your brand, the Kaleidoscope brand, is going anywhere. If we link up, I'll manage you, and perhaps we can kickstart your career again. But we need to change your name. I think we need to move away from Kaleidoscope, which we understood. It was quite a brave move, because all that work we put into establishing Kaleidoscope was going to fade by moving on to a different name. But we had nowhere else to go, so it was worth chancing it. So we changed our name to Fairfield Parlour by a group decision. And Dave said, well, play me your new stuff, play me whatever you like. What have you got? And we played him a selection of songs which would appear on our album From Home to Home. He was a big fan of the Moody Blues. In fact, he was instrumental in sort of bringing back their career after Go Now, when Denny Lane left. And they were lovely people, very philosophical, intelligent group, as was Dave. And we were sort of spurred on by changes to the music genre at the time, because we were very lucky. Psychedelia only lasted for about 18 months. Mm-hmm. And we were very fortunate to be recording at that time, because it suited our style of music at that time. But then when we moved on to Fairfield Parlour, music had started to change, and it was more progressive. And I'm getting a very sore throat from talking my head off, so I'm going to have a little guzzle here.
All right, I know we're making you tell us the story here.
Yeah, so I'm back. It's okay. So yeah, we went in the studio with the album, and then we played Dave Bordeaux Rose, and he said, "Oh, I like that. I like that. That's quite a strong song." But he said, "I'm not sure about the verse.
Hmm.
I wonder if you might go away and have another go at that." And no one had ever told us that before. I mean, Dick Lee, he just loved everything we took him, and just couldn't wait to get in the studio.
Yeah.
I remember the day we went to see him and played him Flight from a Sheer, and he said, "Okay, stop, sit there, sit there." And he said, "I'm going to book the studio for tonight. Get a hold of Dan, get a hold of Steve, and we're going to cut that tonight," which he did. Excuse me, folks. So yeah, when we went back to Dave, we tweaked the verse, and he said, "That's great, that's fine. Let's get in the studio and do that." And we put that out as a single. But again, we had massive play on that. We had a lot of airplay on that because it's a great little song, and that failed because again the distribution. Although the label had, brought out a new label, Vertigo, which was a very well respected label and still is, and we were in the first batch of releases, which we're proud of. Unfortunately, the single didn't make it. The album had great reviews, but that didn't do anything. And it was, we were really struggling. I mean, then we did the Isle of Wight Festival, which was an epic disaster for lots of reasons, which we can talk about later. And then when we came back and started recording a new album, White-Faced Lady, which Ed and I had been writing over the intervening period, Dave was for it. The record company was for it. Olaf Wiper, the guy in charge there, was for it. And he said, "Well, go away and record it. When you come back, we'll put it out on Vertigo." So after we record it, and I don't know, I can't remember who paid for the sessions, whether Dave did or if they never got paid. I don't know that story. But when we went back to Vertigo to see Olaf Wiper and said, "Look, we've got this album, White-Faced Lady. It's a big one. It's a double." He said, "Great, that's fabulous. The only problem is I can't do it." So I said, "What? For goodness sake, what? Why can't you do it?" He said, "Well, I'm leaving. Like executives in record labels, they're always swapping around, aren't they? And leave you in the lurch." And he said, "No, I can't do it. I can't do it." So we were appalled. He said, don't worry. I'm going to RCA. Leave it a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. Come and see me at RCA, and I'll put it out there." So Dave said, "Well, okay, we'll have to hang on to that. Well, it's a help." So Dave went back in 2 or 3 months and said to Olaf Wiper, "Right, the album, you put it out." He said, "I can't do it." I said, What are you on about?" He said, "I can't do it. RCA won't let me do anything I was associated with Vertigo." So we were caught. Between that classic rock and hard place. And of course, we lost heart at that point. It was a stressful time for all of us, and I'm afraid the band broke apart, and that's what the cause of that was. So we all drifted off and went off and lived our lives and thought that was the end of it, until I think it was the 80s. I'm not sure when, mid 80s, something like that. And somebody rang me and said, "Did you realize your albums are being re-released?" And I said, "No, I had no idea. I thought we'd been forgotten." And they said, no, your albums have been re-released. When I looked, they had. I was astounded. So that's what led to White-Faced Lady finally being released. We released it on our own album through another company. And that just kick-started my creativity. I couldn't stop after that. And that began with Dream On. I can't remember when Dream On came out. If it was late 90s? Yeah, late 90s perhaps. And then it just went on from there. I just never stopped. And the only pause I've had is in literally the last month, 5 weeks. I've just slowed down a bit. I'm messing around with other bits and pieces and writing and do different things. So I shall come back to it, but I'm not going to let it lie. I can't, and the muse will come back, and it will give me a kick up the backside.
Well, so you started answering a question we have actually here. So, first question: um, why was White Faced Lady released only in 1990 and not before? So you
Yeah,
did
I
start
think we've
answering
covered.
that.
Yeah, we have covered that. Yeah.
Is there anything you'd add to it though? Like how did that work out though? Like how so this is like 1989, 1990. Did someone approach you guys to release it, or did you just start looking
Well,
for someone who was?
we linked up again with Dave. I mean, because Dave had the tapes, and we said, well, look, you know, I don't know whether you realise, but they're releasing the Kaleidoscope albums again. You know, surely we ought to be able to monopolise on this. And he agreed, and we said, well, look, this is the best chance we're ever going to get to put out White Faced Lady, and that's why that happened. Then that's why it took so long to do that, but that's exactly why it happened there, because we got back with Dave for that one project, and put the thing out, you know, and it sold out.
What was the initial label that you worked with on that one?
I can't remember who we released it through. I mean, we called it the Kaleidoscope Record Company, but it was actually under an umbrella of a label. I'm afraid I can't remember
So it was a
which. I
bit of
think
a, but it was a bit of an indie release though, because you guys were involved in it
yeah,
heavily.
yeah.
So
Well, yes, it was good to be involved in it, you know, because we
yeah,
had full control of it. It was a bit tricky because we had a favorite photograph that I'd found for the cover, a beautiful young girl, and it was by a French photographer. And we said, well, if we're going to put this out, you know, if you want to use that cover, which I did, you've got to contact the photographer. Of course, back then, before internet, it was pretty difficult. That sort of, nowadays you could send off an email and find somebody in 3 minutes, but it was pretty difficult to find him. And by the time he'd come back, it was too late, because the label wanted the copy for the album sleeve, and we said, well, someone's going to have to do it. And so I put my hand up and said, well, look, I love photography, you know, it's my story. Can I do it? And they said, well, someone's got to do it. So I jumped in and did it, and put together an idea, and hired a studio down here in the country, and found a model, and created the cover, which I know has had a lot of criticism, but I don't give a damn. I'm pleased with it. I'm quite happy with it. So that's the story of that.
no, I came across it in a later reissue. I think it was on something Burning Airline CD or something.
Yeah,
That came
that's
out like
right. Well,
1999.
they put out a little box set, didn't they, of
Uh-huh.
CDs,
Yeah.
which included White Faced Lady with I think somebody. I can't remember whether we were involved, that cover with the girl on the front.
Yeah, it was
I can't
different
remember.
covers, and From Home to Home also had a different
Yeah,
cover.
that are
I don't know
weird.
if they
Yeah,
had it.
it was a nice idea, but you know, design has moved on a lot from there, and improved. But yeah, it was a good little box.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think a few of us got introduced through that reissue.
Yeah.
Um, Now we have another interesting question here. Let me bring it up on screen. So Davide asks, why? Oh no, sorry, we answered Davide's question. We're looking at Chris's question here. I'm sure I read somewhere that there were rumors of soundboard recordings from the Belfry nightclub in Staffordshire. Did they ever come to light at all? Do you know what we're referring to here? Chris is referring to.
I think he might be referring to a gig we did as Fairfield Parlour towards the end of that career. I think that was the time we supported Family, you know, the band Family.
I know them very well. I think
Yeah,
I asked you some questions about them. Oh no, might have been another band. Oh
yeah.
yeah, I think it was that one. Yeah.
Not a band we followed at all, and their music was quite different to ours. But
Yeah.
If it's the Belfry, then I think that was the gig where we supported family. But no one's ever said to me that there was a soundboard recording off of that.
Yeah, that would be pretty rare, I think. We have a lot of, uh, we see a lot of like live audience tapes circulating, but not a lot from England in the early 70s or late 60s.
No,
But in America,
no,
everyone was taping shows already by that time. I think it was probably a matter of equipment available. And I think it was
yeah,
just maybe cheaper to have these little recorders in the US than the UK. But it's a shame. There's so many classic gigs. We always see, especially now on social media, we're seeing all these
yeah,
the
yeah,
posters and the lineups, and people are like, "Oh my god!"
yeah, yeah,
And it's a shame there's so little audio recording evidence, even if it's a crappy recording. It's like very little is there. I have to think though that there. I mean, stuff is always popping up, and maybe that's another
yeah.
question. That's a question I have for you: is stuff that pops up. Has there been anything in the last 10 years or so that you can think like Kaleidoscope stuff that has just sort of popped up? I know there's actually a clip of Isle of Wight, which only one song, I believe. But like,
There is,
do you know about
yeah.
that? Like, where did that come from? Or
I don't know where that came from. There is a soundtrack recording. I don't know whether it must be off of the film, I think, but I'm not sure. I mean, the Isle of Wight festival was filmed by a French company,
okay,
and well, it's a long story, the Isle of Wight festival, but we might ask if Roger Simmons is part of this live Q&A. He might like to join in because Roger lives on the Isle of Wight, and I know
researching.
he knows more about some of this than I do. But yeah, there is a, what is it, Soldier of the Flesh, which is yeah, it's out there. I've heard the recording. I've got the recording myself, but it's not very good because the sound mix was terrible. Nobody got a run through. You just walk on stage and just hope someone in charge of knobs knows what they're doing. But yeah, that's it. I have heard it, but like we all know, the Isle of Wight Festival 1970 was filmed, but I don't know if anyone's seen any of that.
Yeah, bits and pieces have come out. From my own research, I know they would ask for quite some money just per second of footage, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
only the bigger bands like the Jethro Tull or a, a few others have released their sets like free. So it would be interesting to
yeah.
know if I don't know if they did the whole set. So I mean, if it would exist, I mean that would be something. We
Well,
should set up a fundraiser for that.
the other thing with that is, I mean, we rehearsed for weeks and weeks and weeks before the performance to make sure we had it absolutely right. We'd been contracted not only to appear but also to write the official theme song for that year, which was "Let the World Wash In," which is a song I absolutely love. I think Ed and I really peaked with that one. We'd never been to an open air festival before. And lyrically, I had to just sit there and imagine myself at something I'd never done before. And I love that song. And Dave's production on that is wonderful. It's a great track. But apart from that, we'd also David secured us a slot on the Friday, actually opening the official festival on the Friday, and we were contracted to perform for 45 minutes. So we rehearsed in some farm buildings down in Surrey for weeks and weeks and weeks beforehand. And Dave stood in front of us with a stopwatch, and we got it down to 45 minutes on the dot. And that was great until we got at the foot of the stairs to climb the stage, and Ricky Farr leant over and said, "Right, get a bloody move on. We're running late. You've got 20 minutes." I
Mm.
thought, what? We had 20 minutes. That's all you've got. So we worked out this fantastic 45-minute set, well rehearsed, we'd psyched ourselves up to go out there and stand in front of, which already was a massive crowd at that stage, even on the Friday early. And he sticks his head out and says, "You've got 20 minutes. We're climbing, 12 steps to the stage, looking at each other, saying, "Well, what are we going to cut out? How do we know what 20 minutes is? What are we going to?" And we've got to work out from our list of songs what we were going to perform, what's going to make up 20 minutes, and what's going to be the best showcase for us in those 20 minutes. So, yeah, it was a disaster from start to finish. All the festivals run late, don't they? Everybody runs late. It's the same with gigs sometimes, but festivals are notorious for that. And we'd never done a festival before and weren't prepared. But yeah, to get clobbered by having our set cut in half as we're climbing on the stage, that's criminal. But there you go. That's water under the bridge.
It is something. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like sometimes you prepare a little too much, and then you never can prepare for something like that.
No, you can't.
Never prepare for those last minute, and that's very last minute changes.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't know about that.
And a big last minute as well. You're just about to step on stage at the Isle of Wight Festival,
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you're already playing and they're like, "Oh, your last song," because okay, you can figure it out. But that's quite a situation there.
Yeah, it did hurt.
I'm going to experiment here. I'm going to try to see what happens if I do this here. I brought in a photo. Okay, you see it?
Yeah.
So this is a photo dug up from the BBC archives. And it's you guys as Fairfield Parlour. I guess this kind of fits in with what I was saying about things that just sort of appear. So this is something that just popped up. I mean, I don't know. I know you guys did the Top of the Pops, which the video sadly that one's probably, well, we'll never see. That one might not never turn up, but this photo turned up, which is from that day, right?
Yeah, I'd never seen that photo before. I've seen another photo that was taken from that session before we went on, but I'd never seen this one. I mean, it's a great photo, but it's a shame the balance is so wrong. I mean, Ed should be standing up rather than kneeling down, but it's a great photo. Yeah, I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, so I know we worked a bit on some other things. Trying to dig up Kaleidoscope or Fairfield Parlour stuff. There was a mention of a promo video, I believe, for one of the singles, but that never has.
Yeah, that was a dream for Julie, which we recorded. It was filmed in a pub in Baker Street, and was a fun day. But it disappeared, and of course, I don't know what the record company were doing, whether they had it, but I've put feelers out before. Nobody can find it. Whether it was ever finished or edited, I don't know. It just sank without a trace because, like all the singles, although they were well reviewed and got a lot of play, it wasn't followed up by the record company, sadly.
Yeah, it is quite some stories there, but it was at the same time, it was quite a time. I mean, here we are still talking about this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always like, I always kind of step back. I'm like, yeah, it was just like, why, it was a moment in time, and I think we're kind of experiencing a different style of moment in time now with all the changes going on, especially in music and technology.
Yes, yeah.
I was kind of thinking, like, as crazy as it is, it must have felt that way in the 60s because it felt like, and I know there's people on YouTube here too who analyze to death a lot of the stuff, and they'll be able to tell you, like January 1967 to January 68, it was like there was different stuff. I mean,
well,
technology just seems to have been moving pretty fast in the late 60s. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I've had a blessed life, really, because at 21, in 1967, January 1967, I was 20, but just coming up to 21, We signed our first recording contract, and we were living in the time of the Beatles, and that's quite something, you know. I've lived my life through the time of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan. You know, you don't get that sort of hierarchy of musicians appearing all at the same time. Um, I know us oldies don't, you know, link up with modern music of today, but you know, those bands are still going today. Those artists are still performing. And nobody thought of that back in the 60s. But to be in London, working in London, age 21, you know, with the whole buzz of the thing around you every single day. I know it's a cliche, but the air seemed to vibrate with possibilities. You had fantastic new photographers, actors, actresses, painters, Hockney, you know, and all these bands coming up as well. It was a magical time to be alive. It was short lived because it all came to an end with you know, the Sharon Tate business in Hollywood, which is sort of really brought the you know, 60s to a terrible end. It certainly felt that way. And Altamont, can't remember what date that was, but you know, I was young in, you know, when the Beatles first appeared, 62, 63. And it was magical. I mean, those guys were just incredible what they did. And even now, they're recognized. It's recognized as being a very different time, and it certainly was. And to have lived through it as a young man, I really do feel blessed, I must say, and being actually part of it as well. And people still looking back and talking about that period and linking my band with it is very, very rewarding.
Well, and well deserved. I mean, you guys did. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you weren't just there. I mean, you were on same stages as these guys in
Mm,
some sense, you
mm.
know. So we have a couple more chat. Let's bring it up here. And thanks again, Peter, for being with us here today. Um, we'll keep going as long as some people are chatting. Let's see. I'm
Yeah.
gonna share it on. This is this. Sorry, I'm like a little all over the place here
Yeah,
because it's the first time
we
we're
should
doing
point we should point out this is the first time we've done this, and it
it.
it took a
We
while
had
to
about
set
a,
up.
yeah, literally last minute
Just a
problem. So
bit,
here we go.
just a bit.
So we got some emojis. Thank you, Kat. And then we got a question. Name a few of your idols and influences. I think you started talking about that too. So anything else you'd like to add? Any specifics
Well,
with the
obviously
idols?
the Beatles first. I mean, as the sidekicks, we were covering early Beatles songs and Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones were playing, you know, Muddy Water songs, things like that. And we did that as well. But later on, I was also, well, I mean, Dylan was always my hero anyway. As a lyricist, obviously, I was attracted to Dylan. He simply amazing. I love him to this day. I wouldn't pay money to go and see him anymore because he hides behind a piano. And even I saw a video today where he's actually went on stage and sat with his back to the audience. I know he does what he wants to do, but I thought that was a bit below the belt. You know, that's not showing a respect for the audience, really. And I hate the way that he destroys every masterpiece he's ever written. But the guy is a phenomenon. I mean, you know, the last album, Rough and Rowdy Ways, so late in his career, I consider that a masterpiece, you know. But you don't go to a Dylan concert and hear that anymore. Not in the way that the record came out. I mean, I prefer to listen to the records. And then moving on from there, I mean, obviously I loved Leonard Cohen. I mean, he was on a par with Dylan for a while. Joni Mitchell is a wonderful, wonderful writer. So you can see I was heading towards sort of singer-songwriter type material, because as a lyricist, that's what I need. First of all my songs, virtually all of the songs I write begin with lyrics. rarely they come up as a complete song, although they do, and that is a magical moment. I feel very humble and honored to be able to write songs, because you can wake up in the morning and there's nothing there, and by the end of the day you've written a song, and you can go on to recording. And of course, once music goes out there, it's pretty much there forever, as long as there's somebody around somewhere who can play music on the latest medium, whether it's, vinyl, CD, downloads, holographic, or whatever. As long as they can do that, then music lasts forever. And I suppose at my age, that's something that is comforting, because to think that I'm putting all this effort in and writing all these songs, and I only do it because I want people to hear the songs. I don't do it for as a hobby. I mean, I'm doing this to put out there and make sure people get to hear it and hope they love it, and it lasts, for them, for various reasons. People remember particular songs that remind them of a certain time. And I'd like to think that went on long after Dan and I have popped our clogs. And yeah, so going back to it, yeah, Dylan, Cohen, all those people, Jackson Browne. It's the lyrics. I love the mood of all their songs, but it's the lyrics that touch me initially.
Now, I'll follow up with that. I'm wondering if you guys, as like back in the Kaleidoscope Fairfield Parlour days, were there any bands, like, smaller bands that you would gig a lot with that you liked, or anyone comes to mind from those days that you followed?
It's a funny thing, because coming back to your point about the band always just be the four of us, I always say this: we lived in a kaleidoscope world. I mean, all we were interested in was furthering the cause of Kaleidoscope. And although we played with other bands, the only one we got close to really was Idle Race, which was Jeff Lynne's first band, because we toured with them around Britain very early on in our career, once we changed their name to Kaleidoscope. But other bands we didn't really link up to be honest. I mean, we were very much our own men, following our own path. And we weren't musos. I mean, we didn't buy a lot of records. We were broke the whole time we were in, our 8 years. We were broke. We had to save money up to buy our own records, because the label didn't even give us one. We didn't buy a lot of records, to be honest. I mean, yeah, at Christmas I might buy the new Beatles one, and I had to have the latest Dylan or Leonard Cohen later. But no, we didn't follow any bands particularly. And that's another thing I should bring up, because it does irritate me a bit when people say, oh yeah, they're just copying Pink Floyd. It's all Pink Floyd stuff. It's all Syd Barrett. I mean, it's all no, it's not. We didn't know anything about Pink Floyd or Syd Barrett. The only thing I knew about Pink Floyd was See Emily Play, which is a fabulous song. I love it. I'd listen to it now. If I listened to music, I don't listen to it anymore, because I'm protecting my ears, because I'm getting deaf. But people say, oh, Pink Floyd. We never bought a Pink Floyd album. We never listened to a Pink Floyd album. I never bought a Who album, because we just didn't buy albums, because we simply didn't have the money. But as far as linking up with other bands on the road, it just didn't happen. We went in and did the job, and off we went.
Well, that makes sense, I think, for anyone who really is a fan. I mean, because I'd say that your sound was pretty consistent, and I think if you were more absorbing these other bands, it probably wouldn't have stayed as consistent as it was. And, part of the quality of, and why I think people like the band, is because it's a small catalog, but everything is so good.
I think just to say that's one thing that's what's frustrating, because I know people love Kaleidoscope, I know people love Fairfield Parlour, but I guess a lot of people don't know about my solo output, which is a shame. It's incredibly frustrating, because anyone listening to my albums that you've put out, the 4 albums, one with Mark and Is No Escape, The Rhymer in the Long-Tongued Room, The Leopard and the Lamb, and now The Life and Times of Blue Larry and the Huguenot Kid. Yeah, this is the Rhymer. But even, you know, there's plenty of tracks on all of those which wouldn't have looked out of place on a Fairfield Parlour or Kaleidoscope album. You know, my aim is, you know, one of my aims is to write the perfect pop song, which, you know, a lot of writers want to do. And it's damn hard. It's like love songs. Love songs are hard to write. But, you know, I try my hardest. And on a lot of those 4 albums, they feature songs which, as I say, would not have looked out of place on certainly on a Fairfield Parlour album. And it's still the same guy writing those lyrics, you know, since poor Ed's gone. I mean, I do it all myself now, the melody and the lyrics, and record them myself. But it's, you know, it's frustrating that people don't get to hear some of that. You know, if they just tried some of my albums, and they would find that there's plenty to like there if they're fans of Fairfield Parlour and Kaleidoscope. And I hope that over time they will do that, because that's why I'm writing these albums.
Well, and that's a good segue, because that's why we're here. Actually, we want to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
There's a couple more questions, but I'm going to hang on to those because they kind of take us back to what we were talking about. I want to talk about these new records. Trying to see, I have them here on vinyl, because they do come out on vinyl and CD. And I believe this is the first one we put out together on Think Like a Key. I know we got a lot of glare, but to keep the shrink up. So tell us about this one.
I love that album. The track listing on that was very pleasing. It's got quite a mood to it. There's songs on there like The Diary, for instance, which I love. It's got a really good mood. But then going back to writing the perfect pop song, it's got Black Cab on there, which came out of nowhere, and I absolutely love that. I mean, it captures the 60s. It really does capture the 60s. There's a lot of 60s references in there, but yeah, I was really pleased with that, the way that worked out. You know, you can get stuck in a rut with songs. You know, people who listen to my album or Kaleidoscope or Fairfield Parlour will find there is a variation in a track listing. You don't get all folk songs. You don't get all pop songs. We've always been the same, going right back to Tangerine Dream. There'll always be a different mood throughout the album. And that's certainly the case with that particular album, because you go, like I say, from Black Cab all the way to The Diary. The Diary, a very moody story.
So this was 2023, and then 2024 brought out this record here.
Yeah, The Rhymer in the Long-Tongued Room. Yeah, that's a quote from a Dylan Thomas poem. And again, yeah, it's a collection of songs that really crying out to be listened to as a sequence, you know, to give you the mood of the album. I can't remember which the Rhymer, yeah, Geranium Rain you've got on there, which is a nice song. Mr. Nice, which I know you've done a video to.
For that, yeah.
And on that album,
one of my favorites.
Sorry?
Green Tea, one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a fun track. You've also got The Moon Fell. Now, The Moon Fell is another one of those lyrics that I wrote for and gave to Ed, which he didn't get around to working on. So even on that album, The Moon Fell is a very, very old lyric, goes right the way back, maybe to 68, 69 even. It could even be earlier, because it's one of those little social tales about just Mr. Average. And again, just plucked that lyric out of a file and thought, well, I'm going to work on that. Yeah, you've got a whole range of songs on there. Angelina is unusual. That's a different mood again. But yeah, that there's, like I say, and then The Leopard and the Lamb you've got Petticoat Lane on there, which is another one which I was pleased with, because, you know, I wish I'd have written that back in the time of Kaleidoscope, because, you know, it may not fit now because the style of music out there now, it probably wouldn't. But back in the day, I mean, I think that, you know, that would have been a surefire radio hit at least. I'd love people to hear that.
That one, yeah, I would say that one is a good entry for any
Again,
Kaleidoscope
it's,
fans.
yeah, and again has 60s overtones as well.
And that does remind me though. So this album here, Running Through Chelsea, I think that title track, for example, and a few others on that record, um, really really bring back a bit of that '60s, '70s folk vibe.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
with the modern twist for sure.
Yeah, well, that's you know, a lot of that, you know, a huge part of that is down to Mark Mortimer, because when I write on my own, I write the songs myself. But when I'm collaborating with anyone like Damien Hughes or Mark, Mike Dole, um, you know, they like, they want to write with me, I want to write with them, and we try and work out between us how we're going to bring that about. And what I do, I ask them to send me a rough outline of the music so that I can then work out a melody line and write my lyrics to that. And some people like Damien will just send me a little acoustic demo, which are absolutely beautiful, little lo-fi demos, and with his lovely, gentle acoustic guitar playing. And I'm off on one at that point, because that's my kind of music. There's nothing better than just a simple voice and acoustic guitar. I mean, you know, if you're going to write a song that can stand a very sparse arrangement like that sticks with people, you've done the job. But yeah, they send me a rough outline of what they want, and then I work out the melody and the lyrics, and it works. On Running Through Chelsea, and Mark, you know, not only sends me like a demo recording, he sends me almost complete recordings, and all I have to do is write my side of it. He goes away with his producer Donald Skinner, and they sit down together, add any little frilly bits that they want, mix in my vocal, and the job's done. And the thing, when you collaborate with other people, of course, they push you beyond your boundaries. It's easy for me to fiddle around on the keyboard, get some guitar parts going, and write a sad song. You know, I could probably do that, you know, tomorrow if I chose to do it. But I could never come up with the sort of music that you've got on Running Through Chelsea, because Mark is a particularly good arranger, and he has a whole army of other musicians that he can call on, and they're all brilliant as well. They're all virtuoso musicians. I have great regard for musicians, because, you know, I can, you know, put together a recording using today's techniques by, you know, adding digital tracks here, there, and everywhere. But there's Mark there. But when he sends me a track, it's absolutely inspiring, and off we go. So yeah, there's some tracks on the new album that we're planning, which I'm very proud of. I mean, you've got, you know, again, a great little pop song called "The Heat Goes Up," some mysterious tracks like your Hollywood Child. There's a track on there called Andy Warhol in the Kitchen. God only knows where that came from. I mean, you know, Mark hit me with that, and then the lyric just worked, you know. And yeah, we love working together. Mark's a very hard-working musician. He's jobbing musician as well. He works every weekend. So all the combination of those 4 albums, which I have to say, Roger, I'm, you know, incredibly grateful to you for backing me on all of this, because your faith in me is very rewarding, I must say. And those 4 albums do contain, I believe, some of my best work over the last, whatever it is. I mean, certainly in the last 5 or 6 years, like I said at the beginning of all this, I've had an incredible creative spurt, which I'm blessed with. I don't know where it comes from. It amazes me. Unfortunately, I was able to, commit that to vinyl and CD. So hopefully I'll continue to do that, and just suggest to people that, give it a try. You'll find plenty on there, that will be remotely connected to the band that you love, which was Kaleidoscope and Fairfield Parlour.
And yeah, there's a lot of fans from the original bands that I think do really treasure these albums. So that's definitely very, I think, uh, it's good. I'm glad to be a part of it, and to help. My goal is to help make this available, accessible
Well,
to people, and it is, so
yeah.
people can buy it. Um, Obviously, the label shop has it, thinklikeakey.com. But I mean, in the UK, it's available for shops to order, or you can get it on the usual platforms or retailers online. Same with the United States, and almost pretty much same anywhere in the world. And all that's getting trickier and trickier by the week
Yeah.
to make happen.
Yeah.
Another thing I would add is these are, for the most part, especially as we move forward, these are quite limited pressings, on vinyl plus CD too. So it's hopefully going to be a future collectible for sure. So because a lot of the crowd who like Kaleidoscope, I think also are record collectors. Because that's probably how a lot of people found it. You have to kind of be a crate digger, as they call it, to discover like the really cool stuff from the 60s and 70s. And of course, a lot of people hold the projects you were involved in some of the highest of, uh, of highs. And I think I do want to play. So I have a rough cut of a music video from the new album, right? Fago's Dreaming. What do you think? Is it cool to kind of just play that in a bit here, and we'll have a little break?
Yeah. But just a quick story behind that. I've been, when I started recording, I didn't have any great technical knowledge, and I had a lot of equipment here. I still have, but I was learning how to use it, and I had all the different sound modules set up, and I wrote the song and was working on the backing, and it was fine. It was okay, but I don't know what happened, but I'd been fiddling around with another song and had moved and changed some of the settings on some of these sound modules, and that song didn't work out. And I thought, well, I'll go back to Fago's Dreaming, and I played it, and whoa, what's that? And all the connections were wrong. And it was it was supposed to be playing like a violin, and it would be playing an oboe or something like that, and
Went
all
haywire.
the sounds were mixed up, and it came out with this almost psychedelic mix. And I thought, well, I'm not touching anything. I love it, and that's the way I left it. And that's what you hear on the album. I mean, this was actually released on an earlier album many years ago, but I wanted to bring it back to Blue Larry and the Huguenot Kid, because it's always a track that stayed with me. And I think if people are looking for a little bit of psychedelia in my albums, which that they probably are, then I think this might satisfy that hunger.
It fits the bill. Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so now this video, it's work in progress. It's just a bit of fun to have some visuals going along, but uh, the music is what's important. So I'll cue it up, and then we have quite a few questions when we come back. So we can dive into those if you're cool, Peter.
Yes, of
Let me.
course.
All right, so we'll be back. So this is Fago's Dreaming off the new album, and let us know what you think once I cue it up. Stand by. Let me see. All right, stand by as we're having. I have something else, but I'm not gonna. I don't want to cue it right now. I'm trying to cue this video.
Problem. Neatly arranged when you and I were deranged and delirious. We threw the tablets down the drain. We won't go down that road again. Are you experienced? 15 years disappear, day to day and year to year. Day goes dreaming. Day goes dreaming. Just like your mother, spinning clouds around my head. Rossetti never painted a better picture. 15 years disappear, day to day and year to year. Goes dreaming. Goes dreaming. Will dissolve away. You'll look back and laugh. Someday you'll be experienced. Just like your mother, spinning clouds around my head. Rossetti never painted a better picture. 15 years disappear, day to day and year to year. They go streaming.
All right. So, let me unmute you, Peter. So we're back.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So tell us about, well, we did talk about the song, but tell us what you think of the rest of the new album. That is one of the songs off the new album. However, and this we can talk about this. So earlier we were talking about the importance of like the LP and the running orders and the vinyl and the album in general. This one has probably the most dramatic change between or different track listing from the previous albums we released, which all of them have, I think, extra tracks on a CD because we just end up with more tracks than the vinyl will fit. So we curate it, but this one has the most dramatic because we have 6 songs on the LP, but I believe like 13 on the CD, something like that. And Faye is only on the CD. I just realized that now.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that process. Like, how did you come up with this lineup? Because this was a very specific track listing you gave me for the vinyl version.
Well, I think, am I right in saying that the best timing for a vinyl is limited to 20 minutes per side? Is that correct?
Yeah, ideally, the plants are gonna kind of force you to be under 22, 23 is the max, but that comes at a sacrifice of audio quality. So you want to be under 20, 21 minutes per side.
Yeah, for the best quality. So that determines very tight timing on each side. But of course, within that, you also want to give people some of the best, what you consider anyway, the best tracks on the album, on the vinyl, to make sure they've got a good selection there. But of course, that all comes down to timing. So I think on and there'll be a different running order as well. I think on the vinyl, there's 2 tracks on the reverse side, the B side, and that's because Linden Tree in Chelsea is over 6 minutes long, and Blue Larry is over 13 minutes long. So by the time you add them together with a little few extra seconds run over, you've got your 20 minutes. So, but of course, you still get with the vinyl, you get 40 minutes of what I consider essential tracks from the album. With the CD, you can be a bit more adventurous with the track listing because you've got a lot of leeway and hardly a limit. So yeah, it's fun putting it together, but it's certainly from a vinyl point of view, that 20 minutes per side is tight.
Yeah. Do you think it feels like maybe it's more limiting these days than back in the 60s? Because I guess we have the option to go bigger, go longer with the CD. And I grew up in the 90s, and a lot of stuff just never even made it to vinyl. and now they're reissuing a lot of the stuff on vinyl, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
dealing with like 4 LPs sometimes. I mean, it's like, it's a little
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, yeah.
So, but there's something to be said about the tightness of the vinyl sides, and
Oh
um,
yes.
you know, I think in many senses, when you're working with adverse conditions or something, you might produce a better result. You know, it kind of makes you work a little more.
Yeah, you
Um,
do.
so, but yeah, so for listeners out there, this is the new album, which we're here talking about. But let me check the chat. We have a few more chats here, and we do go back to the 60s and 70s on these. So let me show them. And this first question, I know probably many people have, and for those who follow Peter on social media, we've been hearing a lot about. Well, sadly, we can't see the one, but I have it here. I'll just read it to you. 1 second. Yeah, this format's very new to me here. First time we're doing this. So here we got Davida is asking again another question. This is, what is the state of the Kaleidoscope and Fairfield Parlour box set? I'm really curious with the BBC sessions. Now I know you get asked this quite a bit, but
Yeah,
what's the latest? What's the latest news on this?
it's difficult for me because you know, I'm not supposed to talk about it, to be honest, because it's been spoken about for so many times that and it's bubbling away behind the scenes. Let's put it that way.
It is tough. I always tell artists. Right, don't mention anything until there's a pre-order link available, because
No,
you kind of you can run the risk of exhausting a product that isn't even really there. So while
yeah,
it's and these projects are very difficult. I know the company that's supposed to be putting this out. They just came out with the box set. I have it behind me here, the Bonzo Dog Band box set, which
yeah,
I
yeah,
probably read about, probably five. I know it took like about 7 or 8 years to make,
yeah.
to
That's
finally
right.
see the release date. But they started like 3 or 4 years ago, kind of saying, hey, it's around the corner, and
Yeah. You've got to be
yeah,
careful of
so
that. That's. I think that's what we did. We were so excited. We had no idea it was going to take years. It's been years. It's been
yeah,
years
yeah,
because there's been a lot of problems. I mean, we're trying to put together the absolute very best definitive box set collection of recordings that you will ever get from Kaleidoscope Fairfield Parlour. And
yeah,
if it's going to be done right, it's got to be right. We can't cut corners in any way whatsoever. And putting together the track listing for that has been incredibly challenging. It's in the process. I can't say more than that at the moment. It's in the process.
it'll
When
happen.
something solid is there, everybody will be the first to know it. But just hang on in there, because it's going to happen in your lifetime. If it doesn't happen in mine, that's tough. But it will happen in your lifetime.
Well, let's hope it happens sooner than
Soon.
later. Yeah, for all of our sake, and
Yeah.
well, that's something which the label think like a key. I mean, it's a bit of a serious thing, is the time, like, and I end up with the label. We end up releasing quite a bit of stuff, because there is that sort of feeling like, hey, we got to get this stuff out there now. While I joke around, half jokingly say, I mean, once the distributor goes bankrupt or shuts down,
I
that's it
know.
really.
Yeah, yeah,
And there's been a few. Well, we've had a few like smaller
yeah,
companies we work with go under already, and that's something that would happen all the time. But
yeah.
everything has been consolidated, so you only have one or two players. So
Mm,
it's not just the small labels. It's kind of, it'll shut down all of what I would call the physical media.
Mm.
And yeah, we'll still be able to, I'm sure, ship it out ourselves, you know, and
Yeah.
all that. But you know, right now, you know, it's an interesting situation, interesting time. But that's also so. So my point is, there's that sort of feeling like, hey, we got to get moving on this. And it's amazing with all the technology we have. I feel it was faster to make records in the '60s than it is now.
Yeah, I can understand that. There's a
It's
lot of hiccups
interesting.
along the way, and it's everybody knows the music business is changing too fast. It's you know, and now you've brought in AI where anyone can go online and tap in a few
Oh yeah.
words and say, you know, give me a pop song, and they got it, and they can put it up online and, you know, either pretend it's a real band, or even if they say, well, it's AI, but you enjoy this, someone will come along and say, oh, I like that. You know, it's got a place. It will have a
Yeah.
place, and it can be used. I mean, I've been very vociferous in knocking it, but actually I'm sure it has a place. I haven't experimented yet, but there could come a time when I could be thinking, well, you know, I could do with a piano part for that. I wonder if anything, you know, you could, and even if it's only an inspiration, you know, even if you don't use it, it might be an inspiration.
The inspiration, yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
My grandson Dylan is a musician and a songwriter, and he's
He
in
has a new
college at
record out. Oh no,
no,
that's
that's
your son.
Ollie. That's my son
Oh,
Ollie. Because there is music in the family, and Dylan, who is a lighting engineer and a musician, it was his 18th birthday a little while ago, and everybody said, "Oh, you ought to write a song for him." And I thought, well, it's a big deal. That's quite a bit different writing it for a member of the family. And I just fiddled about on an AI site, AI website, just to give me, you know, just an idea or a rhythm or something. And that's what it came up. It came up literally just with a rhythm, which set me off into writing the song. So there is a use to it. I would be dead against anybody's, you know, saying, right, well, you know, let's do the whole damn thing on there. But no, my son Ollie is in a band, the Clock Radio band, and they've just got an album out at the moment. And just real musicians, you know, they write the stuff, they learn it, they rehearse it, they go in the studio, in an analog studio with a
yeah.
producer, and they record it and put it out. And that's, you know, that's a solid way to do it. But things are changing, I'm afraid. But we have to accept change. You know, there's only two things in life, and that's death and change, and probably
And
throw in
taxes.
tax as well.
Taxes, yes. Um, well, it's very true, and I mean, I kind of with all the changes that have been happening just in the last couple of years, honestly, I've been reflecting a lot more and just putting things in perspective. And again, we go back to like what was happening in the '60s and '70s, and I was just telling my wife, Carla, who I hope is watching. Hi, Carla.
Hi,
Um,
Carla.
that you know, like the year 1960 and the year 1970. I mean, that must have been like, I mean, if you put someone from 1960 to 1970 in like a matter of hours, it would be like, what planet am I on? I mean, it
Mm,
feels like things were so different. All this technology kind of popped up, the culture, the monoculture at the time, and it happened pretty fast. Like, I mean, here we are still trying to figure out what the heck happened in that decade. And
yeah.
AI kind of has brought that a bit too, because I look back at the you know, because I use mainly AI for these videos, music videos, which you know, again, that has a love or hate. And even myself as a creator of that, like, you know, it's a tool. And for some, you know, the problem we have these days is content. As you know, Peter, it's like
Mm,
these machines, the social media machine demands content, constant contact. So
mm.
AI is really the only way
Yeah.
you can do it without just exhausting yourself and your money and everything. Like, I would love
Mm,
to be able to produce proper music videos, but
mm.
you know, the thing is, you know, you don't even have MTV channel anymore. So
No.
you know, so this kind of fills in the gap, and it's but my point is, it's just gotten so much better, and it's almost a weekly thing where
Well,
new tools just keep popping up. And I kind of think that must have been how it was in the 60s, where like all of a sudden, you had the 4 tracks, then you had 8 tracks, then 16 tracks, then 24 tracks. And you hear the production quality of it change, anything from the late 60s to the early 70s. I mean, you went from the Beatles, I Saw Her Standing There, to what they did on Abbey Road. I mean, it's quite a leap.
Well, Sergeant Pepper was, recorded on 4 tracks, wasn't it? And we used to, tracks had to be bounced. There was no other way to it. The drums and the bass had to be bounced together because you needed a new vocal track. But of course, once you'd bounced them together, you were stuck with it. There's nothing else you could do.
Well, what do you think about the new technology that sort of undoes this, where you can kind of recreate a stem?
I know. Yeah, I have heard that. Yeah. Well, somebody sent me. Somebody sent me a. What did they do? They stripped it down just to the stems, and then rebalanced it, remixed it, and sent it to me. It was pretty amazing. I can't remember what it was they did now, but it was ingenious.
Kaleidoscope track?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember what it was, but it was ingenious. And of course back then stereo was only just beginning, and no one knew how to use stereo. So you've got all these terrible recordings with all the drums on one side, all the vocals on another. What was I doing? I did the interview with Dave Bash, didn't I? A couple of weeks ago. Mike Hirschberger and Dave Bash. And they played me a Kaleidoscope song, and I thought, oh God, what's wrong with that? Well, I could only hear half of it because I'm deaf in my right ear. All I could hear was the left channel, and all it was. I don't know. There was a guitar track. I think there might have been a bit of bass, and then the backing vocals were all in there. I couldn't hear the lead vocal at all because that was over here. All I could hear was that. So no one knew even then how to use stereo recordings because the stereo field was just a new discovery to them. I mean, nowadays, we know where everything has to go, but they thought they were being clever. Oh, let's bung the drums over there and put that over there. If people would be fascinated by that. Well, no, we weren't. We didn't like it at all.
Well, we spoke of Dylan and your son Ollie, and here's a question from Cuisine Quest. Who do you see the question now?
I do. Yeah. Well, what I would say was, just be creative. You be the one that's doing the creativity. Don't rely on something else. Not a digital input. Don't rely on that. Learn how to write songs first of all. Look, I always say to everyone, anyone can write a song. It's a simple matter of fact. Anybody can. If you can hum, if you can write, you can write a song. It's as easy as that. The difference is, can you write a good song? There's plenty of people who can do that. But don't be put off by trying. Go out there. Gig as much as you can. If you're a working musician, gig as much as you can. Get as much experience as you can. Enjoy working with other people. Listen to other musicians. Accept their input. You don't always get it right. Listen to what other people are telling you. I mean, I work with Mark Mortimer, who's a brilliant musician, and I'll send him a vocal, and I'll say, well, you mix this in with the track, and he'll come back to me and say, well, I love the lyrics, but I'm not sure about the vocal. I think you ought to have another run at the verse. And I think, oh, blimey, oh, Mark, come on, mate, telling me what to do. And I go and have a listen. I think, he might be right. And of course, I go and have a listen to it and then redo the vocal, send it to him, and it is better. It's like going back to Bordeaux Rosé when David Simon said, I think you can do a better verse. We thought, oh, blimey, no one's ever said that to us before. And it worked. So if you're starting out, trust yourself, be creative, work with lots of other musicians if you can. If you're just working on your own, make sure you're employing a good quality control, because it's easy to go off on one and think, oh, that's great. just stop and think for a minute. Have you done quality control on that?
Makes sense, yeah. And I guess don't be afraid to work with teams, is what you're saying. Like, here's another question, and this is from Zachary Nathanson. He's a really cool writer from Echoes and Dust, cool site. And he asked, during your time with Fairfield Parlour on From Home to Home, how do you feel looking back on that album and being part of the swirling Vertigo label? I know you touched upon this earlier, but if you have any further thoughts on that.
Well, it was an exciting time because we were, we were reborn. We were starting off again almost as a new band, to our mind, and probably to other people's, because they'd never heard of a band called Fairfield Parlour. So for a lot of them, it was new. They were magical times. Dave had a house down in Surrey. It was almost just a stone's throw from Hampton Court. And that particular summer, I think it was 69 probably, or 70, when we decided to throw in our towel with Phillips Vertigo, Phillips and Fontana rather, and go with Dave's idea of starting again with Vertigo. It was a magical time because Ed and I were pushing ourselves quite hard to come up with something a bit different. We were mixing with the Moody Blues and a guy called Timon, who was I think he's now Timon Dog, but he wrote some beautiful songs, and we were pressing on to do our best, and then to get in the studio and find that Dave had control. He knew what he was doing. He'd never produced a record before, I don't think. And it just gelled. We got on well, and the studio was nice. I mean, the Fontana studio was one of these classic big label studios. It was enormous, and we sort of set up our little sticks and boxes of equipment in the corner of the studio and felt a bit dwarfed by it. Certainly, we were in awe of it when we first went in. But when we were Fairfield Parlour, we recorded at Sound Techniques in Chelsea, and that was a much cozier affair, and it was very enjoyable. I mean, all these tracks had been rehearsed at Dave's house in advance. It was the summer. If once we'd finished rehearsing a bit, we'd go down the local pub and have a drink, play croquet on the lawn or whatever, and then come back. Dave's wife Dids would do a nice big meal. We'd all sit down to that. It was a lovely, relaxing time. And then as night fell, it was natural just to sit down with the guitar with Ed, and we would sit round and just sing all our new songs. The Moodies might turn up and give us some feedback. So we knew we were moving in the right direction. And certainly when Dave mixed the album, we were stunned really, because Dave said, we'll come in, I'm going to book the studio, you can have a listening session and you'll come in, because we'd heard the album's bits and pieces and various progress. But he said, right, I think I've got the mix now, come in and listen to it. So we went to the studio and Dave likes volume on number 11 all the time. And we sat there in the studio, and I think that may have added to the deafness, because Dave turned it up as loud as it would go, and it was fantastic. That's my downfall. If when I did listen to music, I used to listen to it loud, because I can't help it. I love it like that. It brings out so many different elements of the music when it's louder. And we were listening to the album, and it came to Emily Brought Confetti, and we were just blasted back in our seats, because the choral quality of that, it was just the four of us. It was just the four of us singing along, creating this choir effect. But when you heard it in the studio, it was absolutely stunning. I was almost in tears. I mean, we came out of that session and we looked at each other and thought, we've done it. We've actually nailed it. This is going to be a fantastic album. Of course, it didn't turn out like that, but I'm very proud of that album. It's got a lovely feel. It's an unusual album in some ways. I mean, it begins with Aries, which is a totally autobiographical song And that's a lovely song to sing on stage. I mean, when I was back on stage from 2011 to 2017 in Europe and America and Britain, I was playing with some lovely musicians from Scotland, the Trembling Bells, and then in America with Rob and Christoph and Lynn, and it was just wonderful playing on stage with real musicians. And Aries always went down well, and a lot of these tracks from Home to Home did. I mean, my manager at the time, Chris Barnett, said, "Why don't you play that in my box? You never play that, do you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not playing that. I can't play that. That's a pop song. That's horrible. It should never have been on the album. It was a Kaleidoscope song." And he said, no, I think you ought to try it. So we tried it. Of course, idiot me, I didn't realize it went down a storm. Everybody loved In My Box. I thought it was just a sing along ditty, but actually live it worked very well. And the bands I worked with during that period, right up to the last one in Hoxton Hall in London, 2017, the anniversary has just gone on the 11th of November. The songs went, and it was fabulous going back on stage and playing live again, because there was no pressure. You knew people would come to listen to you. They wanted the Kaleidoscope stuff. And of course, there were a couple of concerts where I managed to get Dan and Ed along. We played at the Islington Assembly Hall, and both of them not very well. Ed not well at all, and Dan's had a lot of problems over the years with a back injury he got during 1970, I think it was, a gig. And I had them on stage with me, which was wonderful. It was the closest anyone's going to ever get to hearing the real Kaleidoscope. But the bands I was playing with were note perfect. And then the last gig at Hoxton Hall, Dan played drums, and Ed was, although he was very ill, he was up in the balcony and cheering us on and telling us to get off.
Well, speaking of Eddie, we have another artist on Think Like a Key, John Howard. We have a bit of a mystery because there's a Eddie Puma who was one of the first people who kind of recorded a few of his demos and things in 1973 or so. So this would have been post Fairfield Parlour. But then he met up with him again like in 78, and they did a few more things, and then he ran into him way in the future and things. But so he was working with the team, and they saw the name, and they're like, "Oh, it's Eddie Puma from Kaleidoscope," and John never heard of you guys, or heard him speak of it. So he was like, curious about it. However, then later he thought it's this other person, Eddie Puma. However, I couldn't really find too much information on this. And then he mentioned something about Capitol Radio, and I believe Eddie Puma did work with Capitol Radio. So it's got to be the Kaleidoscope Eddie. So it's kind of an interesting link, though. Here we are, so many years later, and we have these artists, and you guys all kind of in this same circuit now, almost.
Well, when the band broke up, I mean, Dave moved on to Capitol Radio, and he got Ed a job there as well, and Ed did very well. And it's no surprise to me that he was working with other musicians, because he could have done. And then, of course, eventually he went on to work with Paul McCartney, because McCartney had a radio program, I think.
Ubu.
That's right. Well, Ed was working closely with him on jingles and producing the show, which I think he got an award on. So, Ed wasn't a slacker. I mean, he was always in the business, it was great to have him on board at the end.
And Dan, I know when I talked to him, I asked him some questions, and it was fun. He actually has quite a story, because he went on to, like you said, I guess Capitol Records, but he was also in in studio work, and he was in Apple
Yeah,
Studios.
yeah, that's
And so
right.
he
Yeah,
sat in. He was a
I
fly on the
know,
wall for
I
many
know.
sessions, like Stuck in the Middle of You
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Steeler's Wheel and things
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
So that's some interesting
yeah.
stories
Yeah,
there.
he worked. I mean, he worked with any Beatles that were in there recording. And if they, if he
Yeah.
was on the tape on that day, he'd be there. So he was right in the thick of it. I loved every minute of it.
So there's a follow-up question from Zachary here, and so it's about the Fairfield From Home to Home. I'm showing it here on screen so we can see it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good question. Good question.
Where was the album cover? I know that's a question I would have too.
Right. Well,
I probably picked up this album without knowing or realizing at the time that it was Kaleidoscope. I had over here in the States, I don't know if you guys were probably not aware or even involved in these CDs that came out on, like, I think Fingerprint Records or something. Clearly,
yeah,
bootleg
yeah,
off the record type of thing. But
yeah.
thanks to that, I think a few of us discovered it. Now, I never saw the first album available, but they put that out. But then I did get a copy of Faintly Blowing at the local Miami shop, Yesterday and Today Records. I'll shout out to Rich Ulua, who's still there, and thanks to him, I got all this stuff. And I picked up Fairfield Parlour in that same shop too, and it was kind of the cover that got me. I was just kind of wondering, So
Well,
it's an interesting cover. Is my point.
That we weren't ever really consulted on album covers. I mean, they just came at us. The Tangerine Dream one in the silver foil cave. We just turned up at the studio in Kensington at Adam and Eve Muse, and that was done. Thank goodness we did, because it's a great album cover. The same with Faintly Blowing. We were told to turn up at this forest, which we
that's
did.
another cool.
That's another one that there were characters from the album that were dressed up. I think Dave Simons was supposed to be there as a Viking, but he got lost. But yeah, we weren't consulted. But that they turned out great, thank goodness. With this one, this was the idea of the photographer, who was Keith McMillan, who was a very leading, a leading photographer of the time. I think he did a lot of the Vertigo covers. And we were told to turn up at this cottage, which when we got there, we found it was actually derelict. But in that photograph, we're on the first floor of this derelict cottage and had to be careful walking across the floorboards, because a lot were broken and there were holes where you could see down to the floor below. But Keith had prepared the scene. He knew exactly where he was going to take the photograph. And those walls he painted brown, and the paintwork around the door, etc., were cream to highlight that. And he knew what time of day he wanted. He put up the desk and the chair and the mirror, and he said, "We need an old lady to represent Emily from the album." And Dan said, "Well, my gran would do that." And he said, "Well, the trouble is, we got to get her upstairs, and the stairs are sort of broken." Dan said, "No, she'll do that. She's up for anything." So that lady sat there is Dan's gran, as far as I'm aware. You need to confirm that with Dan, because Dan's got a better memory than I have on all this stuff. But as far as I'm aware, that's Dan's gran. And then Keith just posed us in the next door room. And I brought along a massive Bible that I bought in a charity shop or wherever. And that was the pose. I've never seen any outtakes of that session, but again, it just nailed it. And it's perfect for the album. Absolutely perfect mood for the album.
Yeah. And it was definitely a trend on to have they use both sides, because we're looking here at the back and the front.
Well, you've got that's the front cover. On the inside, you've got a silhouette shot of some trees on a hill, and the little girl dancing is David Simon's daughter. So these things came together very well, and I'm really pleased and proud that that they're still remembered as good album covers. I would put my hand up and say, look, if you like the White-Faced Lady album, thank you very much. If you don't, too bad. You know, it was a rush job. It was something I had to do because the clock was ticking, but I'm proud of it. I love it. And it brings to life John and Angel on the bed of autumn leaves. I feel it just captures the mood of the album on that one as well.
I mean, it is a shame it didn't come out at the time. I mean, my critique, I guess, would be, I think it sounds great. It probably could use benefit of a more balanced mix, maybe, right? And with the technology out there now, you could do it. Just saying.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't listened to it in a very long time, so to compare it to today, I wouldn't know.
It's quite an ambitious work, though. I mean, it was always planned as a 2-album set, or it just happened that you guys had so many songs?
Ed and I had been writing songs, and we had a batch, and I was looking at the lyrics one day, and I thought, well, I can feel a sort of link between them. And I said to Ed, you know, supposing I sort of create a story that links all these songs together, and if we need some more, we'll write some more specifically for the story. And you know, there's a lot of them. It will need a double album. It's a bit ambitious, but we could try it. And we put the idea. He agreed, and we put the idea to Dave, and he went for it straight away. He went back to Vertigo and told them, and as I say, Life Wiper went for it, and that's how it evolved. I wrote a sort of book to go with it, which wasn't great. I always fancy myself as an author, but struggle with that. The small format song lyric is much more suited to whatever talent I have. David Simons tried to help me knock the book into shape, but struggled. But yeah, so it was reduced down to sleeve notes, which is fine. You know, that's the story. I stand by that. I think if you read the story first and then listen to the album, you get a rough idea of what the story is as the songs play. But it's not immediately obvious from listening to the album. I suppose people would call it a concept album, story album. It's not immediately obvious from the listening to the songs. I didn't want it to be too obvious, but perhaps it wasn't obvious enough. But you certainly, if you read the story on the sleeve notes, you get the idea.
We have another question here from Davide. And it's what is your inspiration to write the melodies and the lyrics? What comes first?
Well, I think I covered that early on. And certainly with the band, it was always the lyrics first for every song. Pass them to Ed. He worked on them. He would then say at work or ring me or whatever and say, well, come round tonight, got some songs. We'd go out to a Chinese restaurant and have something to eat. And then we'd buy a bottle of cheap red wine, get drunk, go back to his place, up 3rd floor at Bollow Lane, up to his bedroom, where he had, we bought him a piano for his 21st birthday, and that was up there. How we got up the stairs, I'll never know. And then Ed would be very nervous about playing me a new song, actually. If he was going to play me some finished songs, then I'd take along a little tape recorder and record what he played to me. Invariably, I liked what he played anyway. And then I would go away and learn the song. We'd get together with Dan and Steve and work the thing out together. But then once the band folded, I was writing all the songs myself. What could I do? You know, I was a lyricist, but not a musician. So I had to, up my game considerably. It was an incredibly steep learning curve. And then since then, like I say, it's continued like that. But if I'm collaborating with other people, it usually begins for them with sending me a demos of what they've got ideas for, and then I write the lyrics to those. Some of them work, some of them don't. Some people send me music after I've said, well, you can send me something, and it doesn't click with me, or what I do doesn't click with them. and we abandoned that. But a lot of the time, the collaborations are very worthwhile. And like I said before, they push me a lot harder. I sing differently on Mark Mortimer's tracks. That's very evident. I push myself very hard vocally on those tracks. And then Mark brings in these incredible arrangements. And then if I need an extra musician, I pull in a local saxophonist called Derek Head, who is absolutely brilliant. He plays in a sort of like a jazzy type band here in my town. But I got the idea that Derek can do more than that, and I pulled him in early on some albums. I wrote a tribute to Jack Kerouac, Jackstown, and asked Derek to have some contribution to that, and he just blew me away. I mean, he's amazing. He also plays penny whistle or another sort of fluty type instrument, which he's very good at. So he's been playing on my albums, and I think, as far as I know, I think he's on Our Mutual Disease and Elfin Boy. He did a fabulous job on Elfin Boy. I think that was your idea, wasn't it, Roger, that you were going to do a tribute album to Curved Air. So Derek and I worked on Elfin Boy, which was an absolute joy.
Yeah, that was a good pick, I think, and hopefully that project comes to light sometime, and we can use the track.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was
hope,
cool to include that in the new album. Yeah, like I said, the new album, the CD definitely has quite a bit extra tracks that the LP doesn't. So I think it's more reason for people to grab both editions. They both
that would be good. Yeah,
it's like you get the same album, but then you kind of also have different experience, in a way, different songs.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question. Kaleidoscope's this is Brasileira Mia. Kaleidoscope's 1906 demo of Flight from Ashia had a 45-second spoken word outro about a crashed UFO that was cut before the single. Do you still have the tape, and why was it axed?
Well, that's a new one to me. I've never heard that before. I'm not quite sure where your contributor got that from. I haven't got the faintest idea, unless they're thinking about perhaps they're thinking about a different track. As far as I know, any recording of Flight from Ashia only ever ended with the band singing what was it? We're poor little lambs who've lost our way. I don't know of any spoken outro. If they've got any information on that, I'd be very interested to hear it, especially with the box set being worked on in the background. If there's any recording of that, I'd like to hear it.
Okay, now we have another one. Do you think you'll perform in the United States anytime?
Well, like I said before, it was an absolute joy from 2011 to 2017 to be back on stage. The gigs I did in America were absolutely wonderful, because we never made it as a band over there. And I was invited over by a group of Kaleidoscope fans, and they did a wonderful job, and we bonded. I love bonding with other musicians, but we just clicked straight away. And as with the Glasgow bands drawn from the Trembling Bells, we all got on so well. Such lovely, and the young musicians, such lovely young musicians. But America, yeah, look, I loved it. I was in the first gig in 44 years was in San Francisco at I can't remember the venue, a club in San Francisco. And before, we had a run through in the afternoon, and then we went across the street and had something to eat, and we were sat outside. It was a wonderful evening. I mean, your climate out there is just wonderful to experience. Get up every day and feel warm. And it was a lovely balmy evening. It was dark. We were sat outside this restaurant, and I suddenly thought to myself, my God, it's 44 years since I've been on stage, and in half an hour I'll be going over there and performing for the first time in all that time. And I thought, I'm just sat here eating and enjoying myself, and I'm not nervous and not worried about anything. And ever since then, the later gigs, I never had any stage fright or nervousness about any of them. They were just a pure joy. But probably because I felt so confident, that the band was going to get it right for me. And certainly the American gigs in the second tour, we went across from San Diego, San Francisco, LA, Las Vegas. We actually played Las Vegas. John Fallon's club out in the outskirts. Hello, John. That was fun. And then we ended up at the Austin Psych Fest, which really, really was an absolute joy. It was wonderful, even though it was a shame because we were performing at twilight, and it had just started. It had been a lovely day, but it had just started to drizzle just a little bit. And we were performing the Sky Children. It was the last track, or was it? No, we probably finished with music, but we were doing Sky Children, and it's got, I don't know, 11, 12 verses, something like that. So I have to have the lyrics written down. There's no, I can't help it. If people know that, I can't remember that, or the lyrics to that. So I had the lyrics written down, and I was looking down at the lyrics, making sure I knew where I was. But there was this magical feeling. I thought I wanted to take in what was happening here. And I glanced up, and there were the crowd, and they were just with it. And it was dark, but it was just beautiful lighting, and the rain was just caught in some of the spotlights coming down. I thought, oh, isn't this wonderful? And of course, I looked down at the lyric sheet, and I'd forgotten where I was. So I had to sort of la my way through till I found where I was, which I regret to this day. I think now, looking back, it might sound unprofessional, but I wish I'd have just stopped the band and said, look, it's my mistake. I fluffed it, but this is an important song. I want to get this right, and done it again. I wish I had, because they were actually filming it as well. But yeah, I'd love to perform again. I love it on stage. I love playing all these old songs to people who've come along specifically to hear them. But I'm, like I say, I'm deaf in my right ear. My audiologist has told me, don't do it, don't risk it. It's a shame, because another thing with a box set, when it does appear, I assume there's going to be a bit of a buzz around it. And wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great to just do a couple of gigs just to finish off and say to people, well, here we are. This is how we were. This is what we did. And a big thank you to people for their support over the years as well.
What was it like in the 60s? Did you guys have like a fan club, or what would it be like back in those days?
We started a fan club. I mean, it was only people who used to come to the gigs. And Ed used to produce a fan club newsletter each month, which was fun.
Oh, wow.
Because Ed was quite a little artist. He liked to do cartoon-like artists. Ed and I were absolutely mad on Alfred E. Newman and Mad Magazine. Yeah. I love Mad Magazine. We were hooked on that. And Ed used to do little spoof drawings of some of the articles in Mad. And they went out. Yeah, it didn't last long, to be honest. We had a secretary that was running it, but we just picked up fans from gigs, how you did, of course, in those days.
Yeah, although your tracks, your songs did get radio play. It was just not really. It was like the pirate radio still, or there's some stories, I believe, that you get the radio play, but they wouldn't find the record in the shops, which we've discussed that.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, I mean, you couldn't count the number of radio stations, could you? No one could count the number of radio stations. Look, in Britain at that time, we had Radio 1, which played pop music. That was it. That was it. There was one radio station. Apart from that, you had the pirate boats out in the North Sea, which I think was probably Caroline at the time. I can't remember whether that was the only one, but the only mainline, radio station was BBC One. That was it. If you didn't get on BBC One, you didn't have a chance. Nowadays, it's totally different. In fact, it's too different now because there are hundreds. You know, anyone can get onto some sort of chart somewhere if they're lucky, because of, you know, some obscure digital station with a guy sat in the in his garage with some equipment will vote it up. But that was the thing back then. Of course, there was only one music program as well. That was Top of the Pops, which we managed to get on. And then we bought a rose, and we were told, look, if you get on Top of the Pops, you're almost guaranteed that your record will rise up the charts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 places. You're almost guaranteed that. So we very eagerly waited for the music papers the following week, and it went down because people just couldn't buy it. It wasn't in the shops. It was infuriating, frustrating.
I know, and I know, you know, people familiar with the band. I mean, they know the story where here you guys had such great material, and it was a bit of a it wasn't optimized.
No,
you know,
that's right. No, people are confused by the fact that we never made it. I'm afraid, Roger, that I've only got a couple more minutes, and then I must go.
Yes,
that's
no,
all right
of course.
with you.
Well, I want to thank you again for.
I think we're up to the 2-hour mark, but
we got 2 hours. Yeah,
I am tight for time.
Yeah, I told you we do like an hour, but we do get talking. I have one last question. I guess we can just kind of throw out there.
Yep.
But this kind of ties back to. I mean, you've discussed this, I think, publicly, like the demos, that you do have some demos. And of course, performing live soon.
I think. Well, we covered the live section. Thank you. But the demos, when we used to go in a studio and record a demo, you then got an acetate, which was a very hard plastic disc, very fragile, where the recording was cut with a needle, and they had a very short life. Those things, because the more you played them, the worse they got. So we did have some. Dan had some. I had some, and you know, I've mentioned the box set, and you know, there's a chance you will hear them.
Very cool. Well, again, thanks, Peter. I do want to remind our viewers now, and you know, in the future, because this, I believe, will get saved. So we have documented, and then this is a CD version, so we got a little kind of classic gatefold on here, and so the life and times of Blue Larry and the Hugh and Knock Kid, that's available now. It's coming out the end of this month. It's available for pre-order now, and I would snatch up a copy because, like I said, this was a very limited run. It's really out there just for the hardcore fans to pick it up, get a physical version of it. It'll be on digital and all that streaming, but the physical is always an important thing to have, especially when the cloud and the streaming sound you can, right? That's the idea. All right, Peter. Any last thoughts, comments?
No, I would just we'll just link to that. You know, I just urge anybody, if you like Kaleidoscope Fairfield Parlour, just give it a try, because there's plenty of stuff on there that is not far removed from those songs that you already love. And to thank everybody for their support up to now. Anyway, I put a lot of albums out and they've sold a lot. But, you know, it's nice to know that with new ones, people are listening as well. Yeah,
there's a lot of fans. I get a lot of, good feedback coming in all the time. So we'll keep going. And we're excited to have this as the newest addition to your catalog and to the Think Like a Key catalog. And again, thanks again for the chat and for putting up with some of the technical difficulties. But I think it was fun, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roger, for your support, and it means a lot. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone tuning in now and in the future. So with that, we'll say good night. Goodbye. Not good night here. It's only 1 p.m. And now I got the fun part of figuring out a nice way to end this. don't really have it. I think I'm going to go ahead and play Faye Goes Dreaming again, and then we'll cut the stream.
I like that. I like the video you've done. It's very good. The girl swimming in the green lily pond.
Good scenes.
It just nails
some good
it for
moments.
me. Yeah. Thank you very much.
It's going to be fine-tuned. So this is an exclusive for the stream, because once we post it, it'll be a little different. But all right, here we go. And
cheerio.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
See you, and see everyone else later. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Problems neatly arranged when you and I
plenty to be saved. Tell her about freedom.
Were deranged and delirious. We threw the tablets down the drain. We won't go down that road again. Are you experienced? 15 years disappear, day to day and year to year. Faye goes dreaming. Spinning clouds around my head. Rossetti never painted a better picture.